Is having a low IQ inherently an abuse upon your children? And if yes, should the state take away the children of low IQ parents? The US state of Oregon seems to believe so. But why? And if it is to be an accepted policy, where is the line? After all, there are entire population cohorts that routinely have low IQs. What's next? Huge orphanages again and the state raising the children of the undesirable populations? Let's explore. Hello everyone and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Alright, so I found this story on someone's Facebook wall who said he's conflicted about it. I have to admit that I found nothing conflicting about it, but considering we're in a climate where mass legal child kidnapping by the state is the norm in places where leftism dominates, such as Oregon or Norway, maybe we should discuss it a bit more. So, the story comes from the Daily Mail, something we've grown accustomed to because such cases rarely make headlines in the American cathedral. Now, say what you want about the British tabloids, but at the very least they relentlessly pursue these kinds of stories. So, the Mail titles Controversy as Oregon couple are forced to give up their children to social services after they were deemed not intelligent enough to care for the babies. And goes like this, quote, an Oregon couple has been fighting a legal battle after they lost custody of their two kids because both were designated not intelligent enough to care for them in a safe and proper manner. Amy Fabrini, 31, was reportedly unaware about her state of pregnancy when she grew far into her third trimester with her now eldest son, Christopher. Fabrini did not receive formal examination or treatment within the 9th-month term and went into advanced labor at the family's home where she gave birth on September the 9th, 2013. Fabrini's partner, Eric Ziegler, 38, was receiving financial aid through the Social Security and Supplemental Security Income Program on the behalf of a mental disability he was diagnosed with. Earlier this year, social services acquired and fostered the pair's second newborn baby, Hunter, while he was in the hospital following past allegations brought against them. A relative to the couple initially expressed concern in a complaint to authorities regarding the Christopher's well-being under the care of Fabrini and Ziegler, according to the Oregonian. A child welfare report alleged Ziegler had been sleeping with the baby on the floor and almost rolled over on him. Fabrini's father, Raymond, said he and his wife were acting as the primary caregivers at the time because he believed his daughter did not possess the instincts to be a mother. After taking a required IQ test, Ziegler scored a meager 66 and Fabrini a 72. The IQ of the average person ranges anywhere from 90 to 110. Ziegler's IQ score categorized him under the mild intellectual disability range, while Fabrini extremely low to borderline range of intelligence, according to the report. Fabrini had been working as a grocer to help provide for her family at the time. Ziegler was unemployed due to his health condition. Board member of Healthy Families of the High Desert and advocate for the couple, Shireen Hagenbach, said the decision to place Christopher and Hunter up for adoption lacks substantial groundwork and may be even more detrimental to the family as a whole. They are saying they are intellectually incapable without any guidelines to go by, Hagenbach said. They're saying that this foster care provider is better for the child because she can provide more financially, provide better education and things like that. But if we're going to get on that train, then Bill Gates should take my children. There's always somebody better than us. So it's a very dangerous position to be in. Domestic abuse and neglect were not factors in the custody case. Fabrini's aunt, Lenora Turner, told the Oregonian, she believed the decision was unfair in the grand scheme. I honestly don't understand why they can't have their children. I go to the grocery store and I see other people with their children and they're standing up in the grocery cart. I think, how come they get to keep their children? How do they decide whose child they're going to take and whose child can stay, Turner said. Fabrini and Ziegler insisted that they have complied to all of the state's orders over the course of the past several years. We've just done everything and more than what they've asked us to, Fabrini said. It doesn't seem like it's good enough for them, they're saying. Who would parent Christopher better, the foster parents or the parents? Is basically what they're going on, Ziegler added. So long as Oregon's parental rights law stays in effect, both children will remain under watch by foster care. The parents will continue to have visitation rights under the supervision of another. So, basically, the only information that is missing from this story is who from the extended family raised concerns and what exactly were those concerns. But considering that there is no information of any of the adults being tried, let alone found guilty in a court of law of any wrongdoing whatsoever, I think it is safe to say that those concerns were either unfounded or irrelevant. So essentially, we have two people who have done absolutely nothing wrong to anyone, but whom the state nevertheless decides to kidnap their children because it deemed them as parents as not being smart enough, and all under an Orwellian named parental rights law. Now, am I the only one who sees this as complete and utter madness? Because the way I see it, institutions like CPS were erected to stop the cases of abuse, but where exactly is the abuse here? Yes, the parents are technically dumb, but they're also not abusive and clearly good people trying to make the best of their situation. I mean, come on, one of them worked several times and still tries to get a job, which goes to show that even at an IQ of 72, it is still possible to make a living honestly and have a family. And it would be even more possible had it not been for the endless bureaucracies which make everything for everyone far, far worse. Now, the argument for this type of intervention appears to be the belief that the state or some foster parents with presumably higher IQs can produce better outcome for the children than these two low IQ parents. Now, that belief is dubious at best. There is comprehensive evidence that most of a person's IQ is genetic, so even under a best-case scenario, the outcome for the offspring would not be significantly better to worth the hassle. But since this is done by a state bureaucracy, the best-case scenario is very unlikely to occur to begin with. So why do it in the first place? Also, if we're going to argue that people with such low IQs shouldn't be allowed to have children, then start up the mass sterilization programs already. But you see, the sensitive, progressive population in the People's Republic of Portlandia would immediately identify this as fascism. But for some reason, such policy is not fascism? Really? Also, if an IQ of 70 or 66, whatever, is the cutoff point, then why not full raids in the inner cities? Serious question. You don't have to be a genius to figure out that it is essentially impossible not to exist at least 50 other cases just like this one, just in the inner cities alone. I mean, come on, 2% of Oregon's population is black. That means around 81,000 people. Basic statistics tell us that there have to be at least a few other such cases in that number, likely with more than 2 children. Now, if I were a member of the alt-right or generally a conspiracist, I would say that these people were singled out because they're white. But I'm neither, and since over 2/3 of Oregon's population is white, inferring bias would indeed be jumping the gun based on the currently available data anyway. So, this still does leave the question, why these people? And in my opinion, there's also the bigger question, why does this law exist in the first place? I mean, I can understand, even though I don't approve nor condone, but I could understand some occasional supervision because of the concerns. Maybe I can understand that, even as I would be militant against it, but I could at least understand the argument. But to outright take children away and put them out for adoption solely because of the parents' IQ and really nothing else? No, sorry, but that is madness. Also, it needs to be said that IQ tests have their own degree of error, and that error can be quite significant depending on the test and the population. I made this point last year as well when discussing race and demographics, but I'll say it again because it needs to be repeated. IQ tests are good to give you a general idea, but they're not an exact science, not even by a long shot. For instance, it is often claimed that East Asians have a higher IQ in general than whites. Now, that may indeed be true, but the process by which such assertions are being made right now is very far from convincing. The Raven's progressive matrices, which is the most common IQ test applied for individuals over the age of 12, has in itself an inherent bias. Now, mind you, that bias is not intentional. It's not like someone sat in a lab and said, haha, I'm gonna make an IQ test that would favor Asians. That's not how it works. But East Asian languages, such as Japanese, Korean, Chinese, and even Hindi to a certain extent, rely heavily on one's ability to understand and write in complex geometrical figures. So whether he wants it or not, a child cultivates a lot more of these skills by the age of 12 just so he can be able to write in his native tongue. By comparison, whites tend to write in the Latin script. So whites cultivate a lot less of that skill in their first 10 to 12 years of life. This is further augmented by the fact that advanced geometry is studied later in life, particularly in Western societies. So even if you take the smartest kid, regardless of race, from a place that writes in the Latin script and the dumbest kid from a place that writes relying on geometrical skill, the latter will score marginally higher on Raven's progressive matrices. This wasn't intentional and definitely not known at the time the test was developed. Now, as a side note, those who write in the Cyrillic script score marginally lower than those who write in the Latin script, because the Cyrillic script cultivates the geometrical skills even less. The point of this digression is not to say that these parents are not unintelligent. They most probably are. But they may not really be as dumb as it would seem just from one type of test. And this is what's scary. Because if another test puts them at, let's say, 78 and 84 respectively, then we're really in dangerous territory. Because 84 is the average IQ in Marshall Islands. California is not much above 84 either. Which means that roughly a third of Californians would also qualify for having their children taken away because they're not intelligent enough. The point I'm trying to make here is that using IQ test results to decide such matters is not only highly imperfect, but also opens up a highly dangerous territory that ends in a totalitarian superstate much faster than one can dare to imagine. I mean, yes, of course there are dumb people out there, maybe some as dumb as we would say over a glass of beer, that maybe they shouldn't be having kids. As I said in the video about sterilization, maybe it is worth considering incentivizing some of those cases to get themselves sterilized. Maybe. But what matters the most is to leave the liberty to the individual as much as possible, especially in cases where there is no abuse and no one is seriously harmed, as it is the case with the story that spurred this video. These people, come on, they didn't harm anyone. So they and their children are being purposefully harmed and punished by the state for what the state imagines that they could or might do. And that, my fellow deplorables, is complete and utter insanity. So, what do you guys think? I mean, should the state intervene in cases where there is clearly no harm, just on a hunch or a belief that there might be sometime in the future? And if yes, how far is that from a Minority Report type of society, and how desirable is that? Also, if you know more about this particular case from Oregon, please do post links or direct reports. Maybe there is more to the story that I was unable to find, which is one of the reasons I spoke less about the case and more in general policy terms. But since the authorities themselves say abuse or neglect was not part of the decision, I really do find it hard to believe there is more to the story that would fundamentally change the way a freedom-oriented person would look at this situation. But hey, I could be wrong. Maybe there is something sinister. Alright, so with all of that being said, thank you all for watching, thank you for your continuous and generous support, and I'll see you all soon on Freedom Alternative.